Good afternoon, everyone at home. My name is Tandy Balfour, and I'm your host for this afternoon. Welcome to yet another episode of Spotlight Conversation. We apologize for starting a bit late, but we hope that you will enjoy the content that we have for you today. So I am again with our resident Mfundisi Mfunsunkosi. Welcome, Mfundisi.
Thank you.
And today we have a special guest. He's joining us virtually. We love technology for that. He is the CEO of the CRL Commission, and his name is Brother Edward Mafadza. Welcome, Brother Eddie. So,
good afternoon, Pastor Kosi.
Yes, sir.
So what are we talking about today? Well, we're looking at religion broadly, and we're looking at the regulation of religion. So if you remember a couple of years ago, it was in the spotlight in South Africa, the question of should religion be regulated or not. And we're wanting to find out from the Commission in terms of where we are now. But I also want to have a conversation about what you at home think on this topic. Should religion be regulated? What would that imply? What are the implications if it's not regulated? So I want to start off then with you, Bra Eddie, by just asking you to please give us a brief in terms of what the CRL Commission is and the type of work that you're involved with the Commission.
Thank you so much, and good afternoon to everyone once more. The CRL Rights Commission, in full, is known as the Commission for the Promotion of the and Protection of the Rights of Cultural, Religious, and Linguistic Rights of Communities. It is one of the Chapter 9 institutions in the country. When we say it is a Chapter 9, it means you find it in the Chapter 9 of the Constitution of the Republic. It is clubbed together with your Auditor General, your IEC, your Public Protector of Human Rights, and others. So our reason for existence in terms of the Constitution is to strengthen and deepen democracy in South Africa. Specifically for the CRL Rights Commission, our mandate is to promote the rights of communities when it comes to issues of culture, religion, and language, with the purpose of fostering peace between and amongst our communities, but also the issues of tolerance, because we believe that as South Africa, we are different but one nation, different in terms of our cultures, religions, and languages. We also, as a commission, are tasked to investigate any matter that is related to religious issues or cultural or language issues, and try and mediate where there are conflicts. In other words, we also are tasked to resolve conflicts. In more than what I've just said, we carry out our mandate through different means. We do public education so that communities in South Africa are aware of their rights when it comes to issues of religion, language, and cultures. But we also do research, because we do find that in our course of doing our work, there are those heritages that are were disadvantaged during apartheid. So the whole vision is to also resuscitate those diminished and diminishing heritages of our people when it comes to issues of culture, religion, and language. So in doing that, we are expected as a commission to be reporting annually to the South African Parliament. And as we speak now, this commission reports directly to the portfolio of cooperative governance and traditional affairs, which is currently chaired by the Honorable Ms. Faith Mutambi. So basically, the vision in the establishment of this commission is for us to be able to celebrate our diversity and be able to acknowledge and accept that we are different, but we are one nation. So we encourage the issues of coexistence, social cohesion in our different communities. Because if you look historically, in the past, there were some communities that were marginalized when it comes to issues of religion and language and issues of culture. And predominantly, you will find that Of course, Christianity was at the top during that government, but with the new dispensation, almost all religions are accepted in South Africa. So Christianity, it could be African religion, Rastafari, Baha'i, Jewish, and so on and so forth. So we also, apart from doing that, are tasked with the responsibility to make sure that all legislations that we establish in the country, they are religious, cultural, and language sensitive. So, but for the purposes of today, I will dwell much into the issues of religion so that we can understand the discourse in terms of where we are coming from when it comes to issues of religion in the country. So if I need to just recap one presentation I made to the church in 2018, we were at that time busy with the project of commercialization of religion and abuse of people's belief systems. And we reported, we shared with you that this project was completed then, in 2017, and we had a number of findings and recommendations that we've taken to Parliament during the fifth Parliament. And from that time, what happened now is that we had to brief again the sixth Parliament in terms of this report that they call it a legacy report for the committee, so that they can get to know exactly what was happening before they came in. So since we have actually briefed them, there are lots of discussions around this matter, around the recommendations. I must say that not all our recommendations are actually, under discussion. It's just where we are talking about issues of establishment review mechanisms. And in that regard, the portfolio committee is still gonna be taking the consultations further, just to get also from the first-hand experience some of the concerns that are raised by the religious sector, so that we can be able to find a solution to the challenges that are facing the country when it comes to issues of religion.
Can I, sorry to cut you off there, are you at liberty to share with us what some of those recommendations are?
Yes, we are at liberty to do so. Just to recap some of the recommendations. Firstly, we are saying it is time that there should be order within the religious sector. And we should be able to separate, the religious activities from the business activities. Because in our investigations, we found that there were some religious institutions that were actually running, their institutions like business. And as we speak, when we look at some of the accounts of the religious institutions, they were in a billion amount when we look at them. But these people were not necessarily paying any tax. So we in that recommendation, we were saying that we need to separate the religious activities from the business, so that the business can then be taxed and be able to pay tax. But also some of the recommendations that we found very interesting is the abuse of visa application by those that visit us in the country, which we shared with Home Affairs and the Security Cluster, because you find people who would be coming to the country perhaps for some kind of purpose like visit, but after 4 weeks or so on and so forth, they've established the church, and that trace of the purpose of their coming to the country is lost. And now they've started business in terms of the church, running churches and so on and so forth, which you can hardly find in other countries. And this, for us, it creates a security challenge for the country. So we were saying that there should be a close monitoring when it comes to issues of visa application, so that, at least we should know who is who within the religious sector, doing what, where. As we speak now in South Africa, it is very, very difficult to get to know how many pastors, inclusive, from all different faiths that we have in the country, or even those that are coming from other countries and those that are within the country. In addition, it is very difficult for us to even know how many religious institutions we have. And it was we were quite exposed now during COVID, when the religious sector wanted to get some kind of assistance from government, some sort of relief. But because that information was not there, it was very difficult. And the Commission now is in the process of trying to establish a database for all these institutions to register, so that when we have disaster like this one, when the relief is supposed to be shared, perhaps they could be part of that. So these are just some of the few, but then we recommended mainly that for us to be able to be orderly, we are advocating for what we call self-regulation, wherein institutions should be able to manage their own issues in a way that if somebody within that particular institution is out of the way, they should be able to reprimand that person and bring that person to order. This will not necessarily be a challenge for your traditional churches like your Roman Catholic, Lutheran, the Seventh-day Adventist, and others, because they are very well organized and their machinery is working and they are already self-regulating. But the challenge is with the standalones, especially with the some of the independent churches, where one man is everything, or else he's working with his wife or his child to run a church. Because our understanding is that a church is a community and it belongs to the community. So when it comes to those kind of areas of independent churches, not all of them though, you will find that one man decides what to do with financials, with the property that the church accumulates, and that becomes a challenge because, and also a risk at the same time, because if that man is not there, these people end up fighting and killing each other. We have cases of some religious institutions currently that are in the battle of leadership, and they are actually even, to an extent, attempting even to kill each other. And some of the cases are even in court. But as we speak, religion by itself is supposed to be saving the people, is supposed to be, saving souls. It should be saving humanity. Yeah. It's not supposed to be something that threatens the security of the country. You find some independent churches where the bodyguards of those, pastors or leaders are even more than the bodyguards of the president of the country. And you wonder as to where do they get the muscles to be able to run such kind of things. Yes.
Sorry to cut you off there. I wanted to ask you one more question, then I want to bring Mfundisi there. So if you can finish your thought and then just answer this. Can the commission enforce, or do you just make recommendations?
That's a very critical question. The commission is supposed to make its recommendations to any organ of state. So when we say we make recommendations, it means that those recommendations must be considered by those organs of state to implement, including Parliament, by the way. We also make those recommendations to Parliament, especially when it comes to legislations and so on and so forth. So the issue of the teeth of the commission is currently a debate, but we do have the teeth. It depends on the sizes that we are looking for. But we do have, because if we do summon you, you need to come. If you don't come, then it's an offense. That is part of the powers that the commission has. So you do not have any choice to decide not to appear before the commission if the commission calls you. One, I can say that the commission has got also what we call the referral powers. So where there are limitations in terms of the work of the commission, in terms of bringing people into responsibility. We have a luxury of calling in the Human Rights Commission to deal with certain matters in terms of our Act 19 of 2002 to make sure that they and help us enforce the power.
Okay. Brother Eddie, technology is failing us. Your network is not so good. So I think I want to bring in Umfundisi in the meantime. Whilst maybe you can, I don't know what you can do, but you've gone.
Actually gaps. So we do have
we lost you there for a while, so we've missed quite a bit of what you said. So I don't know if there's any way that you can maybe have a look at your network. But I want to bring Umfundisi here in the meantime. Umfundisi, okay, firstly, what's your take on what Brother Eddie is saying about just the role of the commission and coming from a position from the church's side? What are your thoughts on this?
I think I've got three things to say. First, it's a very worthy exercise and move by the current government, because the previous government was a church-run government. The National Party got its cue from the NG Kerk, which had its cue from John Kuyperian theology of the 17th century Holland church, which also assumed that whites were a chosen race and we were not, were pagan, we needed to be evangelized through civilization and so on. I remember the late brother of Prime Minister John Foster speaking in a December 16 event in Vryheid. They were celebrating 100 years of the Great Trek. He said it was God who placed them here, and he's the one who helped them to defeat the pagans, the Zulus. He went public. The whole story was recorded in the newspapers. I think somewhere in my boxes I've got that cutting from the Star. But here is the issue. There is no perfect system in the world. Even democracy is not perfect. But it is the best under the circumstances from which we come, where it would be difficult to have a voice within government that would be recognized in the area of religion, because there was only one religion recognized. Did you know, for instance, that Muslim marriage is not recognized in this country during the time of the apartheid government? And a lot of other things. Your African independent churches would not be registered if they had less than a particular number, or if their pastors had not been trained theologically. So this commission has created space for people to practice conscientious religiosity. But the devil will always have his take around some of these things, as he has explained, that charlatans have moved into the story and spoiled the cake.
Is it not, though, infringing on my rights for religious expression, having to have state regulate that? Does that not, border on controlling?
The term religion comes from Latin religio, a relationship. So you can't practice religion alone, which is why God created a family, which was the basic unit of a community. It is impossible to be religious alone. With whom I do relate, because in the first place, you have to relate to God, and all religions talk about relationships with your surroundings, your neighbor. There's an ecology in religiosity which no one can evade with impunity.
But bringing in the state, because there's some prudence in separating church and state, isn't there?
Yeah.
So bringing in the state to now be the one that actually regulates religion, and is that not the state overstepping on areas it shouldn't?
There are two things I want to say there. I have engaged in with that question for some years. But the current scenario in South Africa is the best we can have under the circumstances, because it would be difficult for people to be openly religious if we did not have an end of the apartheid system. That's number one. Number two, the devil does take advantage of license. He creates of freedom. He creates his own excesses. I do suspect that based on what he has told us, some of us have taken the liberty to misuse the freedom we have in the area of religious liberty. So there has to be a set of guidelines within which we can operate.
So is this admission by religious bodies across the board that we've failed to manage ourselves, and so we need help by big brother government?
Who else will regulate us if it is not government? The Bible enjoins us to obey government where conscientious issues are not involved. Mm-hmm. But of course, that stretches the elastic rather too far, because there are people who believe that they were licensed to do certain things which are unbiblical, for instance. So my overall view in this whole discussion is that while we have mechanisms such as the commission, not long from now, the devil is going to narrow the space for freedom completely, political, religious, and cultural, in preparation for what you and I know eschatologically.
Well, that's the fear, isn't it? That although it may sound that the initial reasons for regulation sounds noble, but once there's regulation in place, who says the scope won't grow? Who says then the nature of that regulation won't go beyond just the let's protect you from the charlatans?
I think we need a discussion like this one to warn Adventists about overselling themselves to the freedoms created by human beings, because they might become a drag. Some of us that may lead us to a lull, because Adventists know that one of these days all these freedoms will come to an end. So let's exercise the freedom, our faith within the freedom, responsibly, constructively. But we need to insert urgent mission into this, because my problem with freedom that Adventists enjoy, particularly in this country, is that they only have the freedom to worship among themselves. We have hardly done anything here in terms of transforming our societies, even our communities, in relation to mission. Many people don't know where we go to on Saturday. They just see us dressed well. Perhaps for them it's party day, or they go to some business meetings. But we are not known as a church. Statistics also show that, we hardly 500,000 in the country. It's a scandal. And it means that number will impact very little on 50 to 70 million people in this country.
Just a reminder to those of you watching at home that we are live, so please send through your questions, your thoughts on this. Should religion be regulated? Is that even a question that should be asked? I mean, maybe it's now just academic, but what are your thoughts? What would be the impact of regulating? What is the impact of not regulating? Brother Eddie, can I bring you in here? You spoke about self-regulation, right, by churches. So I'm assuming that would mean bodies made by members from different churches. Would you separate the different religions? So would there be a Christian body, a Muslim body, a Jewish body, or are you looking at religion across the board? I think you're on mute. We can't hear you.
I was saying that, are you able to hear me, Ms.
Yes, we can hear you now.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much. I was saying that I must conscientize, though, that our intention as a commission is to try and navigate and by all means not to try and get the state to control religion, because we are very much aware, looking worldwide, on some of the incidences that are actually happening because of the state, for instance, in China and other places. In Africa and Rwanda, where you will find that, for one to become a religious leader must actually have a theology, which is most applicable maybe to our church, but to others, in terms of our constitution, it can take them just somebody, mentoring them for 3 months and they become qualified in their own institution. So trying to answer your question, we envisage a situation where the autonomy of a particular institution will remain, but there must be do's and don'ts, generally that are actually applicable to every religious institution that we have in the country, be it Christianity, African religion, Muslim, Jewish or Baha'i or any other religion. Because what we seek to do is to try and get some kind of order, because it looks like the sector is in a chaotic state as we speak. You can hardly hear. You can hardly not to hear every day the bad incidences that are happening within the religious sector. So the idea is to try and help them organize. And we are saying those that are organized, like the Seventh-day Adventist Church and others in the context of our discussion, should actually also help those that are not, who are actually struggling. I can say that within the Seventh-day Adventist Church, Pastor Nkosi is here, he will correct me. I know that if there are challenges that a member is actually experiencing, there are internal processes that a person should follow in order to, deal with the matter. It could be your board, it could be, and many other things. But in other churches, this responsibility is lying with one person. And your fate is between you and this one person, and it's only dependent on the relationship you have at that time. If it's a bad relationship, you are finished. So they end up in courts. And you will recall that there were matters that were taken to court, which the Constitutional Court actually directed that particular religious institution to say, we cannot pronounce any judgment. You go back home and try and solve your challenges first. Because they know that if they make a judgment, that judgment can be a precedent that can affect the whole religious sector, badly. So our idea is to say we cannot be like Rwanda, we cannot be like China, because we are a constitutional democracy. We must find a middle road where we're able to separate the so-called charlatans, from the people who are really doing the work of religion. And that's the space in which we must navigate, which will need a lot of consultation, lots of legal experts to come in so that Parliament can be able to shape it in a direction that is much more accommodative and inclusive, and not necessarily, jeopardize the freedom that many people fought for. I want to comment on the point that you raised of freedom of religion to Pastor Nkosi, and I want to quote from someone who wrote, who I know is not a very good friend for some people, but this is a declaration that was made by Pope VI in December 1965 in terms of the question that you've raised. And it was during the Second Vatican Council. I wish we could listen to this. He says, the right to religious freedom is exercised in human society. Hence, its exercise is subject to certain regulatory norms. In the use of all freedoms, the moral principles of personal and social responsibility is to be observed. In the exercise of their rights, individual men, meaning religious people, and social groups are bound by moral law to have respect both for the rights of others and for their own duties towards others and for the common welfare of all. Religious leaders or religious people are to deal with their fellow men in justice and civility. So, furthermore, society has the right to defend itself against possible abuses committed on the pretext of freedom of religion. It is the special duty of the government to provide this protection. Its action is to be controlled by juridical norms which are in conformity with the objective moral order. The last one. These norms arise out of the need for effective safeguard of the rights of citizens and for peaceful settlement of conflicts of rights, also out of the need for adequate care of genuine public peace and out of the need for proper guardianship of public morality. I just wanted to make that comment on the issue of freedom of religion. Perhaps as we continue, we can add more.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thanks for that. I wanted to ask, just staying with you, Brother Eddie, I'll come to you, Mfundisi. So, to me, this then sounds like a duplication of what the Human Rights Council should be doing, and also what's the role of the South African Council of Churches then?
That organization did not embrace every church. Adventists were not members. But those who did not belong would be, I don't know if they would be in South Africa allowed to be observers, but I do know the General Conference has observer status at the UN and in the World Council of Churches. Even though some people are arguing the theory that our brethren are compromised and so on. I don't have the facts. But I think Adventists tend to read institutions and processes of this nature beyond their immediate purposes, which are valid. And then they move into eschatological issues and then rubbish everything between now and then. I don't think it's safe. Certainly it's not safe. We unjustly invite persecution when it should not be arriving at this time.
So, wow, that's deep. I needed to pause there. Are we not taking the actions of, and I don't want to say a few, because I'm sure the numbers are broader than what we read about in the papers, but we're looking at religion broadly, but it's mainly Christian religious bodies that you find that these issues are being, highlighted on, or is it just maybe because the other religions don't report? Are we not trying to fix everything when it's only a small area that actually should just be dealt with?
Are you posing the question to
And
me?
I'm posing the question in terms of the role of the commission, yes. Or in your experience, Brother Eddie, are there similar experiences that we've heard about the Christian charlatans in other religions?
Mainly, if I may come in, firstly, there are charlatans within the religious sector, basically because in South Africa, the Christians make up the highest population when it comes to religion, almost 80%. So logically, you expect some of the challenges around there. You do have some elements of charlatans in the, for instance, African religion. And in one way or the other, you also find these things even in the media, where religion is used as a tool for money making and false prophecies or false hopes. We usually would give example of some adverts that you'll find on very well-known newspapers at the back, where you are told that if you do 1, 2, 3, a short boy will come in the morning and deliver a box full of money and so on and so forth. But also comes to traditional health practitioners, because they are also, in the context of South Africa, part of the religious sector. The issues of adverts that you find on the, lamp poles of the streets, giving false hopes to people. We are saying that a religion, through the agents of religion, has shifted to what it used to be across the board. But of course, you will find the dominance of this kind of activities within the Christian movement, or within the Christian family, because they are in majority in South Africa. Okay,
thank you for that. Mfundisi, do you see it happening that the different, and now I want to zone in on Christianity, the different Christian denominations, right? And they're different because of different theologies and different ways that hermeneutics. Can they actually function together? Do you see it working that there's a body that can fully represent all the different, will there not be dominance by the bigger bodies, for example, in cannibalization of the smaller ones?
I've got a view that might not be popular. It might be possible for legislation to deal with the charlatans. But in the long run, it may become complex to deal with the broad spectrum of those who are seen to be valid. Because, well, I'm going to present a minority view here. From the Adventist point of view, some others are Babylonish in their behavior. But we have no right to condemn them because in the first place, we've never evangelized them. Right? We have no right. I can't condemn you if I have not told you what the truth is. I must first educate you and then say you are wrong here. But Adventists have this tendency of being intolerant towards other religious formations when they've not educated them about the truth. I don't think this is a positive, a constructive approach. Don't condemn what you don't know. Fine. 2, don't condemn when you have not taught. The large bulk of Christian people believe that Sunday is the day of worship. We can't condemn them because that's what they've been taught. Get the point? We need within the Adventist Church to broaden the scope of what we mean by faith, what we mean by Christianity. We also need to take account of the fact that we have now more than 2,000 years of apostasy around the Bible. And so the people in the market are so many, and they rise each day, as our friend here has explained. So Adventists need to tiptoe as they speak into this complex and complicating mirage of what it means to be a child of God. Especially in Africa, which according to John Beat in his book, Introduction to African Religions and Spiritual African Religions and Christianity and Religions, Africans are notoriously religious. They push religion into every part of their lives.
And that's where my question is coming from. How are you going to bring all those different ideologies and thinking and say, okay, now function as one body because we need some level of bringing normalcy into what's happening here and to deal with, how do you even define what's wrong? Because it's based on from whose perspective?
I'm going to give you what might sound like a typical Adventist answer, but it may not necessarily be so. Because you know that when we deal with the question of religion, we're also dealing with sensitivities, personal, group-based, and institutional. And you also know as Adventists that the final wars in this world, will be fought in the area of theology, worship, and all those things. Yeah. Remember also that the war did not begin here, did not begin in the General Conference, did not begin in Washington and in the Vatican City. It began in heaven. So we are engaged in a super ecclesial program here. The devil is also planting his own plan within these good democratic models to tarnish the product finally. He's also creating space for those who might be the persecutors to find grounds for cornering people into a particular direction. So this commission, to me, has been a blessing for a democratic South Africa. It might have provided indirectly education to some religious charlatans and leaders who then had to be corrected in the ways they were taking. Some of them, of course, are denying the fact that they're satanic. Others are denying the fact that they're raping women. Others are denying the fact that they're squandering money and so on. But the commission has given the society in South Africa, post-apartheid society, a screen or a mirror through which we can examine who is telling the truth, who is doing the right, and who's telling the lie, and who's doing the wrong.
But how do you regulate a calling? How if I say to you, I have a calling, because again, the issues of faith, that's the challenge, isn't it? How are you going to say no, that's not a calling, or how are you going to say no, God didn't say your people must eat grass?
Jesus gave us the regulation. Simple. You shall know them by their fruits.
Well, we're seeing them driving the Lamborghinis and all of that.
What fruits are those? Why do they drive the Lamborghinis alone? Why? Why can't everybody in the church, all the deacons, the boards and so, why is it they alone? We're not talking about creating heroes here out of the gospel. We're talking about serving the flock of God. There is no farmer or shepherd who will wish to highlight the virtues of a particular sheep above the others and keep punishing the others or underfeeding one sheep while serving others.
Well, here's where it gets complex as well, is that the things that get highlighted, and I mean, there's a few examples that we've seen in South Africa over the last couple of years, they're not necessarily raised by the congregation themselves who are supposedly affected. They're raised by outsiders who are watching and saying that can't be right, that can be, there must be something wrong there. And yet the people, I mean, we see them in court protesting and saying, bring back our papa and all of that, because they are for them, that's their faith and they believe in that. So who are we to say
there are
no?
There are two reasons for that. We have the devil and those who know the truth at play here. The devil has taken advantage of the space that those who know the truth, who know better, have not moved in. It is a scandal that Adventists are generally quiet on social issues in this country, and are expecting some ethereal politician to come from somewhere to correct things that they should have addressed. Besides, we have to admit that certain things cannot be right in the world until they are right even in the church. We need to set our own house in order as Adventists. And I'm glad, personally, I have a sinister liking for the persecutions, because they're going to sift the chaff from the rot. You get the point? From the fruit. Even though I might be lost myself, but God has got his own way of settling this cause, ultimately with the devil. It may sound like a joke, but it might also sound like I'm being rough on the church, but I'm not. We are human beings dealing with a very complex issue when it comes to religion. I think this commission, I never thought the government would move in this direction. Initially, I thought, wow, they're going to land into trouble. A commission of religious regulation, but they've performed fairly well so far, as far as I'm concerned, and I'm impressed that government was able to pick people from various denominations to deal with this issue. Yeah.
Brother Eddie, let me bring you in there as well. So a lot of the quote-unquote traditional churches are not necessarily South African churches, like the Adventist Church. The head office is in America, right? So the constitution of the church, in terms of the functioning of the church, is also affected by that. So it's not necessarily just South African operation. So how do you deal with a case where it's an international church functioning, operating locally? How are we going to be able to impose, and I don't know if that's the right word, on a global entity or on an international entity?
You have raised a very critical question, which almost all the traditional churches will find that head office or the headquarters are not necessarily ending within the borders of Africa. You'll find that some of them are in America and so on and so forth. So it's a wake-up call in terms of how the system works. When we go to issues of saying that we are going to be able to create a database where all these religions that we have in the country must be known. We should also know whether these religions are, the headquarters are outside of the country. That in itself should be documented and be known to government. I don't think there's anything wrong if the name Seventh-day Adventist or Roman Catholic or Lutheran is owned by the head office that is in America. It is the responsibility of a collective of that particular institution to make sure that they register, their institution to an international kind of, platform. Of course, there are expectations, the expectations of compliance by these individual, countries, because it can not only be South Africa. You'll find that even Botswana has got its own controls. So, in our view, that is the area where we need to actually, engage on when we come to issues of how are we going to manage that. And that debate has started. We had, I think, in 2019, 2020, early 2020, a discussion that was organized by one of the international churches. I think is the Latter-day Saints, which brought in different representation from Africa, different countries in Africa and Europe, and invited us, and we invited Parliament to be part of these engagements so that we can all be educated on how other countries are dealing with that question. So we got experiences from countries like Ghana, Uganda, in terms of how they were sharing experiences on how they are managing that kind of a situation. So for us in South Africa, it remains a debate that we should come to some kind of a conclusion once we have picked up a direction that we want to take in terms of the issues of having some kind of management for all religions within the country. So it's not a concluded point that one can make. It's a continuous discussion, but we are still engaging with the international communities because there are many churches that are not necessarily within the borders of Africa by their origins. And that is in itself also creating a challenge because we must also, this cooperation, we must also not marginalize the systems that are working. So we must really be able to balance these things, especially that South Africa, with our constitution, is very open and accommodative. So there's no way we can stop such kind of governance of other religious institutions that are outside the country.
I just want to ask a question. My home is in Durban. I'm not going to call names of institutions and so on, but I'm going to give you a scenario that I would want to discuss with you on a private basis. A relative of mine and others have been captured by religious movements operating around a particular part of Durban. They capture girls particularly, or youth who think they have got dysfunctionalities in their lives, bad luck, who see things at night and so on. They keep them for days and weeks and months without the knowledge of their families. And they charge them money. Nothing very sinister is taking place there. One that I talked to recently said they're giving Bible studies, they're giving food and so on. But it looks like there is a movement growing around the Durban area to use religion for commercial reasons while exploiting the psychosocial dysfunctionalities of young people. I've been vague because I don't want to be talking about a particular case. But there's such a story taking place now, and I'm intimate with one of these cases. I would want to discuss that with you outside of this context.
Mm-hmm. In fact, I think, Brett, my question was going to be on that. Do people come and report to you if they've identified something? How does it work? What are the channels of bringing something like this to light? Because you did mention that the commission investigates, mediates, resolves conflict, but are you taking, people, I can just walk off the street and say, this is what's happening in my church, and then you'll come and investigate. How do people bring cases to your attention?
Firstly, we allow people to come into the offices to register their complaints as a commission. And we also have in our website a complaint form that is accessible for those who can be able to access it through the website. And you can also call us. If you get to our website, you do get our numbers there. And call us and be assisted in terms of the challenges that you may be facing. That actually is the work that the commission is seized with, because there are lots of challenges around the communities. Even in Durban, we're dealing with a number of complaints around the abuse and people making money, but abusing their fellow so-called Christians or believers. So we do, through even education, when our teams go to communities, as they educate people about their religious rights, they also talk about how they can register complaints with us. But really, we welcome complaints, whether they are sent through emails, whether they come in through fax, whether they come in through walk-ins and different means. or whether you report on behalf of somebody else. We are welcoming those kind of forms to deal with the complaints within the commission.
Okay, I'll come to you, Mfundisi. I also have a question for you as well. So I think you spoke earlier about potential registration of churches. Like now we don't know how many churches are not registered. Who defines what a church is? And then who also defines that this is a pastor? Because as you said, some pastors have got, degrees, and some pastors have been mentored for 3 months, 3 weeks. Are they self-proclaimed? Or is the commission also involved in the definition of what is a church and what makes a pastor?
That is the terrain that we don't want to get to. Each and every institution should be able to tell us that this is their pastor, because they do have processes that they put in place themselves as individuals. For one to be able to qualify as a pastor. For us, it's just to take the database and make sure that we know that we have this kind of people in this particular institution and so on and so forth. The commission, once we start defining what a pastor is, we will have veered away from our mandate because then we are beginning to delve into the issues of doctrines, because we don't want to get into issues of doctrines. Ours is to promote and protect the religious rights of communities, and the community is that gathering that is using belief systems to promote the welfare and the well-being of the people here on earth in terms of, how they are made, in terms of, the documents that governs their own religion. It is them who should tell us, as long as they say religion. If there's an argument that says a pastor, the definition of a pastor is this, the definition of a church is this, it must be done by those institutions in their collective. If they are Christians, they let them have that debate away from the commission, and they must tell us that, if you carry the Bible in our belief systems here, you are one of the pastors, because there are those that the Bible, they've got some conducts within their own institutions that says the Bible it cannot be carried by anybody. Those who carry it are only pastors. And you find some churches that are saying, you are at liberty to read the Bible and debate it, even if you have been baptized yesterday. So they are the only ones who can tell us we don't want to delve into those areas because we will create a problem. And that's where now the state interference to religion can be very, very dangerous. So we leave it to the institutions, to the individual institutions. Like I said, the reason why we don't get into that, if you go to other religions, it takes somebody 3 weeks to be a pastor. While in others, it takes 4 years for somebody to be a pastor. So, we, as a constitutional democracy that embraces all religions, you must let everybody play his game, but you must find a place where they converge.
Mfundisi, why are churches not playing big brother to each other? Why are we not calling each other out? Why? Because, if we all believe in the same Christ and in the same Bible, we should then be able to hold each other accountable as different denominations into different churches.
Yeah, I think that's a very important question in this time in a democratic space. We need to go back to where we lost the plot. When the missionaries came here, they came here as denominations. They transferred post-Reformation struggles into the colonial space. They came as Lutherans, they came as Presbyterians, they came and so on, came as Adventists and so on. So the colonization of African people went along with the colonization of their souls. So you can't remove colonization without tampering with religious colonization. Sadly, that one has affected all denominations. And African people have now moved into their own model of colonizing people spiritually. So we are not about to see total consensus from Christians on this matter, which is why it was a very good act of justice on the part of the state to install a program or an institution such as the one in which my brother is a member and a functionary.
But that
we-
just sounds like saying I'm failing to speak to my brother, so the neighbor is going to take care of that situation. Why are we not, we claim to be Christians. That's the one thing we have in common. Why are we not calling each other out on these things?
I'm going to be less than scientific on this one, on the answer. Remember that the religion deals not only with doctrine and practices and programs and mission, also deals with the forces that are not seen. So disunity in the global Christian community is not inspired from Washington or England or China or whatever. It has nothing to do with the virus that's killing us now. It has something to do with the fact that the devil has invested a lot of his energy and conspiracies within religion because he knows this is the modality within which heaven works to save human beings. This is also the modality within which human beings fell into evil. And as you know, prophecy, it is also the modality that is going to take us into the into the future before Jesus comes. So I don't see us arriving at a point where all Christian formations will be talking the same message as though nothing ever happened. Remember also from an Adventist point of view or a biblical point of view, there's going to come a time where the devil will create a super church that will start dictating, cutting down on freedoms and so on. And I think religion should be taken more seriously than any other discipline because it is within this discipline where a lot of epistemic and lifestyle disparities occur. Sadly, even within one denomination. It's an interesting thing. I was reading a book recently and I started reflecting on Adventists and how there are various forms of Adventist persons, not Adventist truth. But have you noticed that each of us has pulled his own slice out of the big bread? Yeah, so all I'm trying to say is in the interim, let's work with the CRL. Let's work with any other person who means good. But we must also keep in mind the fact that the devil has invested his poison into this whole thing, and he'll pull it to cover every other thing when the time comes in his timetable.
Brother Eddie, let me give you a chance for your last word on this. Unfortunately, we're out of time. So you've said that Parliament you've given recommendations and suggestions to Parliament and there's discussions that are happening. Any sense of timelines and then any sense of what next?
Well, that question can only be answered by Parliament itself, because it has got its own processes in terms of how they do their work. But I want to believe that COVID challenges are also playing, on their side against their plans, because they cannot be able to engage with communities as we speak, except that they should use virtual means. But if you look broadly, the people that you would want to participate also from the religious sector, some may not have access to this technology for us to be able to have a sense. So one will not be able to say by next year, but we know that they still have, at least a 3.5 years to go. And we hope within that space, they will be able to find a way of dealing with it. But I must say, all corners of debates, this matter is becoming very critical. There are those that now are pushing for the regulation within the religious sector. They are pushing for the regulation of religion in the country. We are conscientizing them, we who produce this report, to say that our intention perhaps is not to regulate religion. It could be to regulate the practitioners themselves. Because if you look at the religion itself, there's nothing wrong. The problem is with the people who are doing these things in the name of. And we are saying that perhaps that could be the space that we should explore to say, shouldn't we behave like the law society, perhaps like the doctors and others who've got these formations that governs the conducts of their members? And perhaps it could be time that we also look at those areas for the religious sector itself. It could be done under the umbrella of self-regulation, but that list must be kept somewhere so that, if somebody does something, government is able to know who to contact so that they can deal with their members. We can give you an example in my conclusion. For instance, the man who fed people with grass there was an intervention from other religious bodies like your SACC. And because it does not belong to them, he told them that, no, don't act like a big brother to me. And there's nothing that they could do. And the ACDP tried to even report a case, but there was nothing that they could, the police can do, because the man will tell you that grass is not killing anybody. There's nobody who's complaining about this grass. It's you who's watching it. So we must find a way, because the challenge is really with the people who are representing a religion. The religion itself, there is no problem. And we hope that in the discussions and the consultations that Parliament will take forward, we need to explore these spaces. And I think those who've got sober minds must be ready to come in and assist, must be ready to come in and solve the problem. This problem is not affecting the larger population of the country when it comes to religion. It's just a less percentage that if we strategically can put our minds and our thoughts and our strategies, we can navigate within the ambits of our constitution. We can be able to navigate to make sure that we are able to deal with the challenge that is facing us. And I must say, in the Seventh-day Adventist Church, when one looks at the church manual and the Constitution of the Republic, there are areas where they agree. And I always say to some people, as to which one came first, is it the Constitution of the Republic or the church manual? Who it from who? And for me, that is a good sign for the church, because it would seem like we are on the right track. But we should not be complacent. We should always be people who are vigilant, as Pastor Nkos has said. And the only way of being vigilant is also to utilize this, you call this program Liberty.
Religious liberty.
Very actively, because that is a program that needs to be linked to these discussions more often, so that the voice of the church is there. And we are very much appreciative, not out of my own, suggestion or, invite, or the Transvaal Conference wrote to the church, to the commission, and the leadership came there, without even knowing perhaps that who is the chair, who is the deputy, who is the CEO, and they came and they just said to us, they're just coming to do the prayers. Just for during lunch hour. And we really appreciate those kind of interventions, because we need that when we are dealing with these kind of issues. And we are saying the whole general membership of the church should be willing to participate and give direction. Perhaps that is the light that we must give to the others. Thank you so much.
Oh, that is so sweet. That's such a nice point to end on. Thank you for letting us know of that. Mfundisi, your last words on this?
Eternal vigilance is the price of liberty.
So, I think we've just scratched the surface in terms of what the actual issues are here. But I think what I'd like to leave you with at home is that let us not sleep or slumber. There are, as Mfundisi said, there's forces at play beyond what it is that we're actually seeing. And if you're a follower of prophecy, we should also be able to read where we are and what that means. But in the meantime, you should guard your beliefs and your religion and your God jealously, because we're not giving a good impression for those who don't know this God. by acting the way we act and treating each other the way we do. So thank you so much for tuning in. Remember, continue the conversation there at home in your own corners, and we will see you next week. From my side, Tandy Balfour, thank you, and thanks to my guest.
Thank you.
Bye.
That everything's gonna be alright. Trust in Jesus, trust in God.
Everything's gonna be alright.
Bambelela, kuzolunga.
Everything's gonna be alright.
Everything's gonna be alright, my friend. Everything's gonna be alright, my friend. That everything's gonna be alright. Oh, that everything's gonna be alright. Trust in Jesus, it's gonna be right.
Everything's gonna be